In this video, we'll be looking at question 2.5 from 5CO01. You should have read the scenario and know that this question is asking you to assess two factors that could impact employee well-being in the organization and explain why addressing these factors is important. Before we dive into the approach, I need to remind you that this video provides general guidance on how to tackle this type of question. It doesn't give you the answers. You'll need to do your own research, analysis, and critical thinking. With that said, let's walk through how to approach this step by step. First, let's talk about understanding the question. The command verb here is assess. That means you're expected to make reasoned judgments about the significance or impact of two factors, not just describe them. The question wants you to focus on why these factors matter in the scenario and what could happen if they're not addressed. So stay focused on critical analysis. Ask yourself, why are these factors especially relevant here? And what are the real consequences if the organization ignores them? Now, when you're making your judgments, you want to go beyond simply outlining what the factors are. Really think about how each one affects employee well-being. Use evaluative language. So instead of just saying something changed, you could say it's significantly undermined well-being, or it's particularly detrimental. Weigh the evidence from the case study. And don't forget to consider different perspectives. For example, how might these changes feel for management compared to frontline staff? Always make sure you're explaining the reasons behind your analysis. When it comes to planning your answer, start with a short introduction, just a sentence or two. Explain why employee well-being matters in care settings and why it's a big deal in the scenario you've been given. Then, structure your main analysis into two sections, one for each factor you choose to discuss. For each factor, you'll want to clearly state what the factor is. Back it up with specific evidence from the case study. Analyze its impact on employee well-being and reference any relevant theory. And explain why it's so important for the organization to address this issue. After you've covered both factors, finish with a brief conclusion. Just 2 or 3 sentences is enough to sum up why tackling these well-being issues is so significant for both employees and the organization as a whole. Make sure every paragraph has a clear purpose, uses evidence, and always ties back to the assessment question. All right, now let's chat about using the assessment criteria as your guide. Make sure your analysis links to the criteria. Think about how each factor affects outcomes, like motivation, engagement, or employee health. You could also look at concepts like the psychological contract, or what happens to things like turnover, absence, and performance. If you're drawing on theory, stick to the ones that really fit the scenario. For example, you might want to reference the psychological contract or expectancy theory. Don't feel you need to cover every possible model. Just focus on what actually helps you answer the question. Next, let's talk about using sources and referencing. You'll need 2 or 3 high-quality academic sources that are directly relevant to employee well-being, theory, or sector challenges. Use Harvard referencing for both in-text citations and your reference list. The key thing here is to paraphrase ideas in your own words to show your understanding, and use those sources to support your analysis, not just to add background. When you're connecting theory to the scenario, make sure you use evidence from the case study, like changes in management style, rising turnover, or declining engagement, to show how each factor really works in practice. Link these examples to the theories you bring in, and explain why the scenario supports, or maybe even challenges those theories. You want to show that you get both the academic ideas and what's happening in the real world of the organization. So what does aiming for high marks look like? Focus on depth, not just ticking boxes. Analyze 2 factors in real detail, rather than listing lots of problems quickly. Pick examples and sources that are really relevant. Build a logical argument, acknowledge complexity when you need to, and make sure your judgments are insightful. Show your critical thinking by looking at both the immediate and longer-term consequences of these issues. Finally, let's touch on writing clearly and concisely. Make every sentence count. Don't repeat yourself or add unnecessary details. Each paragraph should make a clear point that supports your argument. Keep your tone professional and academic, and make sure your answer is easy to follow. If you follow this approach, you'll be able to produce a focused, analytical, and evidence-based response that meets the requirements of the assessment and shows you understand both theory and practice. Thanks for watching. If you found this helpful, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Check out the other videos in this series for more tips on preparing your assignments.